Donald Trump is predicting a massive recession. You heard him say it there. A decline in the stock market, and says he will eliminate the $19 trillion of national debt in 8 years. Our economic expert with me now, former Reagan economic advisor, Art Laffer. Art, great to see you.
Thank you, Deirdre.
So Trump gets points for talking about the national debt. No one else is doing it so clearly right now. But how do those numbers work?
Well, I'm not sure that they can work to get rid of the whole thing, but if he gets economic growth with his tax plan, by cutting spending, by selling off federal assets, he can reduce that national debt as a share of GDP really dramatically, just the way Bill Clinton did with the economic growth that Bill Clinton had. I think Donald Trump could redo that easily with the policies he's proposing. But the other thing he said, which I found very interesting, is the Great Recession that he's predicting, unless he's elected president. You know, I wouldn't make that statement either. I think Ted Cruz could do just as good a job. I mean, Ted Cruz is fantastic, but so is Donald Trump. But he's right about Hillary or Bernie. If Hillary or Bernie were elected president with the policies they're proposing, we could have a really massive downturn in the U.S. economy. So it really all depends upon the election, Deirdre, and it really, really does.
Because Senator Sanders has offered a lot of free benefits, basically to everybody, which I think is clear to almost anybody that actually can't work. But Hillary Clinton as well, you're saying there's no way that a lot of what she's talking about would make sense for the economy at this time.
You cannot tax an economy into prosperity. Honestly, it just doesn't happen. If you tax people who work and pay people who don't work, you're going to get lots and lots of people not working. And that's exactly what we've had in the last 15 years after W and Obama combined. And if they continue these policies for the next 4 or 8 years, it'll really be disaster. A poor person cannot spend himself into wealth. It just doesn't happen. When you as a poor person spend, you just go bankrupt really quickly, and that's what would happen to the U.S. if their policies were enacted as they propose them. So it just makes no sense.
Let me ask you, though, because Donald Trump also says some things that actually would be more aligned with the other side of the aisle. I mean, here he is last evening actually talking about taxing the rich more.
Yeah. I like the workers. I call them the workers of this country the best. I don't necessarily like the very rich, even though I'm one of the very rich. But the very rich are going to end up probably paying more, but there's an incentive for them to invest in the country and to create jobs.
So, Art, what do you make of that comment?
I make of it a very commonsensical statement. If you cut tax rates on the rich, they won't hire their lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists, favor grabbers. They'll pay their taxes fair and square. They'll create jobs, output employment, and you'll collect a lot more revenue from the rich, even though they're at much lower tax rates. What we have found in historical study after study is that whenever you cut tax rates on the top 1% of income earners, revenues as a share of GDP from that group go straight up. It's amazing. And whenever you raise taxes on the rich, revenues from that group as a share of GDP go down. Every other group, it's the opposite way, but not the rich. They really do work that way.
And we have heard leading investors, I'm thinking of Warren Buffett, who has said, well, I pay lower taxes than my secretary. I'm not sure why he won't give a secretary a raise. Maybe she doesn't earn the same as he does. But the fact is, he has said, listen, I follow the tax code, so I am paying my taxes according to the law, but I still think it's wrong. So you're saying there are a lot of very rich people who share that mentality.
I wrote a piece on Warren Buffett on his letter to the New York Times for 2010, and it is amazing. He pays about 0.06% of his true economic income because he uses all of the legal tax shelters and dodges there are in the trade. He's the master of tax avoidance, and it's all legal, but he pays, I think he paid $7 million in income taxes, and I guessed his income was about $12 billion that year. It's just amazing how you can find all the loopholes with your lawyers, your accountants, your deferred income specialists, all the favor grabbers out there. You can get it so you really pay very little taxes. Poor people can't do that. They don't have the ways or the means to be able to get around the tax codes, but rich people do. Deirdre, they really do. So give them a low-rate, broad-based, flat tax so there's no incentive for them to try to get around it, and let them pay their taxes fair and square and create enormous numbers of jobs and economic growth for the U.S. economy, which they are masters at doing.
Well, that is common sense, but Art, as we say, common sense, not so common. That's why we need you, Art Laffer. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Deirdre.